Okay. We're going to start on that packet that you picked up at the door today that says Quadratics. Does everybody have the new packet? I'm going to hope my slate is charged enough here. Everybody got this one? All right, the first two are reviews. Do you need me to do one or both or neither or yes? Yes, the other packet has on the back some extra practice or reviews. Honestly, one of them is multiple choice. You could rip it off and like, as we get closer to SAT, that would be a really good worksheet to go back and do for extra practice. But that's why they're on there. They're just extra practice we put on the back. Sometimes I'll tell a specific student to do a extra practice, or we'll suggest you all do one of them. But yes, we are done with the other packet. Okay, one or two, guys, which one you want to see? Both, please? Okay. The first one, what would the common denominator be, guys? 6, because the only denominators are 2 and 3. So I really should be writing this so it's clear we're following the rules of algebra, is we're multiplying a 6 onto both sides. I had somebody yesterday decide to multiply onto one side a 4 to get rid of the denominators. Can you do that? Can you multiply something only onto one side? No, that's a big no-no. All right, so if I distribute here, I get 6 times x divided by 2 would be what? 3x. Plus, remember it's still multiplying here, 6 times 5 is 30. Over here, 6 times x divided by 3 would be 2x. And 6 times a negative 7 would be negative 42. If I subtract 2x, if I subtract 30, I didn't show a lot of work. Are we good? Xavier, are you good? Okay, what was the big deal I reminded you on these kind? Yeah, distribute before you try to get rid of the common denominators. 2/3. Some of you are not doing the problems when I am teaching, so it gets a little, like people didn't know what I meant when I said take 2 divided by 3 times 9. Literally, that's what you're typing, okay? The fraction bar is the divide. So you're typing 2 divided by 3, and then you're multiplying it by 9, which could also be 2 times 9 divided by 3, so it comes out plus 6. Now, if you choose not to take your first step and get rid of the fractions, that's okay too. Like you could add the 8 over here first, or whatever you wanted to do. I'm just going to do the suggested multiply through by the least common denominator, which is 3. Okay, I'm really doing it on both sides. I'm just too lazy to write it. 6x minus 24 equals 2x plus 18. That's 3 times 2 divided by 3 is 2. All right, if I subtract 2x, if I add the 24 over here, 24, 32, 42. Is that right, guys? And then if I divide by 4, that reduces by 2 to 21 over 2. So that's the form you were asked to leave it in on the quiz. Questions? Okay. If you did poorly on that section, come in and retake it. It's literally 4 questions. You could retake it before the parking lot clears out, right? Okay. All right. You have this in a different form on the purple sheet. At the bottom of the purple sheet, it lists the standards. This is off the review. Okay, so the first standard we're going to have is factoring. And then we're going to have solving by square rooting, solving by quadratic, solving with complex numbers. Okay, that's all listed on that purple sheet you have. Now, this is the plan today. I'm going to go through the notes fast and furious. Then tomorrow we're going to take our pre-test for this class, which means you are all going to spend how much time working really hard on that pre-test? Okay, 12 seconds. Some of you might want to do, spend a bunch of time on it. That's fine. But the rest of you can be working on all this stuff that I've gone over today. Does that make sense? So I'm going to kind of go fast over some review. Hopefully you'll have some work time in class to get some questions answered tomorrow. All right, we're going to review all the ways you can solve a quadratic. What is a quadratic, first of all? How do you know something is a quadratic equation? It has a squared, yes. Okay. It's something that can be written as ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I don't know why some of those are capitals and some aren't, just because I'm a loser, I guess. Okay. It doesn't have to have all those terms, but some a, b, or c could be 0. Right, but it's a quadratic if a is not 0. Yeah, I just said they could be. B or c could be 0. All right. The easiest way to solve without quadratic formula is to isolate the term if we can. So let's isolate the x squared here. What do you want to do real quick? Add 5. Just treat this like an algebra 1 problem. And then I added 3 to one side. Yeah, thank you. It comes out a little nicer. That would be 21. Then divide by the 3. Don't divide by the 3 first. Someone always does that. All right. Then square root. What do we need to remember when we're square rooting a variable? This is fancy math, guys. When you square root an x squared, it really means this. Did you know that? Which means that you get this. How many of you just know that when you square root, you got to remember the plus or minus? Okay. This, if I gave you this question, did you know that that answer is only 2? If I give you that question, the answer is only 2. It's called the principal square root because there was no squared anywhere in that problem. The squared that was introduced here indicates there can be 2 possible solutions. Because if I go back to plug this in, 2 is equal to the square root of 4. If I go back and plug this in, I have to square it, so it could have been positive or negative. All right, I know that was a lot of fancy talk. The basic idea is that when you square root something with an x, it has to have the x in the radical. Then you have to remember your plus or minus. You don't have to write it with the absolute value. That was just fancy explanation. But don't forget, if it has a squared, it could have 2 solutions. Number 4. I put number 4 on a quiz, and every time people do it the hard way. And nobody gets it right most of the time. Okay? A lot of times people distribute. Can you distribute first there? What's the order of operations they have to do before you can? Yeah. There's nothing to be solved in the parentheses. So the first thing you would have to do is square that quantity, which means you're actually doing that. Don't write this down because we're not going to do this way. Does this look fun? You would have to FOIL all this out. It is not this. Does everyone know that x plus 2 times x plus 2 is not x squared plus 4? There's a meme on the backboard with Robin slapping Batman upside the head. No, Batman slapping Robin upside the head because he says this. A plus b quantity squared equals a squared plus b squared. And that is not true. Okay? If you FOIL out a plus b times a plus b, you get an a squared, but you also get ab and an ab. Yes? Okay. Nobody's going to do that wrong? All right. We're not going to do this problem that way at all, though. The reason I'm not going to do this is because if I treat this quantity right here as an unknown, I can isolate it. What could I do first to get that whole thing by itself? add 10. So I'm thinking with my Algebra 1 brain, I'm saying, oh, I can do some adding and subtracting to get rid of things. What is Algebra 1 still telling me? I can divide, so I'm treating this as an unknown right now that I just don't even care what's in there. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Then what? I still don't really want to FOIL it out. Can I get rid of a squared by doing what? Take the square root. Now, was there an x in what I square rooted? Yes, there was. So as soon as there was an x in what I square rooted, I have to remember the plus or minus. Again, we could do it with an absolute value, but that just sounds miserable. Can you just remember to do the plus or minus? And then we still have to do what? Let's subtract the 2 over. X. Why does it now want to scroll? Ah! Undo, undo. Alert, alert. Okay. So we have x equals plus or minus 5 minus 2. You can't leave it like that, guys. This is pre-calc. So you need to tell me what the 2 answers are. 5 minus 2 would be 3. Or negative 5 minus 2 would be... Oh, why is it not doing this right? Better? 3 or negative 7? So can you do number 5? What are you going to do first there? Square root, and remember... Oh, am I really back to this? Now, when I add 3 over to the other side this time, I'm just going to leave it because it's exact as it's going to get. If you wanted to write out the 2 answers, you'd have this or this. I wouldn't bother. I would just leave it here. Any questions about that one? All right. The second option for solving is by completing the square. I don't know if you remember completing the square. It's nobody's favorite method, probably. I would definitely have solved most of these by factoring or quadratic formula. But I'm going to go through completing the square. It is very important when we start graphing parabolas. And it gets even more important in second semester when we do conic sections. Completing the square is where you put the what's called quadratic term and the linear term, the one with an x, on the same side, and you add a blank. And then you put the constant term on the other side, which it already had, which is a 7, and you put plus a blank. Is this looking familiar to some of you now? Okay. The rule is you take this, which is called the b, right? Because it was a is 1 out here, b is the 6. If we had written this x squared plus 6x minus 7, this would be b. So you take that b and you divide it by 2. So it's going to become x plus 3. Quantity squared. Now, students don't understand where this number comes from or why it's important. Well, x plus 3 times x plus 3 has to equal this. Because you've changed this, so it's got to be equivalent to the left side still. What is x plus 3 times x plus 3? X squared plus 6x plus 9. Up here goes that term squared. So this becomes a 9. Then we follow the rules of algebra. Whatever you added to the left side, you have to add to the right side. So 7 plus 9 is 16. This one's going to turn out really nice because we can now square root. We get an x plus 3 equals what? Yeah. Plus or minus. There you go. Plus or minus 4. Then we subtract a 3 over there. So 4 minus 3 would be 1. Negative 4 minus 3 would be negative 7. That same problem could have been solved by factoring, but it said show completing the square, so that's what you got to do it by. Same on the quiz. All right. I'm going to write number 7 over here, and then I'm going to move number 8 to another sheet. 7 is x squared minus 10x plus blank equals 11 plus blank. So tell me the first step. I want to make this equivalent to a quantity squared. And then it's half of that, which would be minus 5. And then you square it to put it in that back blank, which would be 25. And again, that is true because x squared minus 10x plus 25 factors as x minus 5 times x minus 5. This one comes out nice again. I was very generous. Can you finish that one? I thought this one might have a radical in our answer, but it doesn't. Let's see, if I add 5 over there, I'd have 11. Negative 6 plus 5 and negative 1. Is that right, guys? Let me get negative 1 and a positive 11. Okay, I'm going to quickly take a little snip of this picture.
Yeah.
Negative 5 minus 6, or negative 6 minus 5.
Am I not adding 5 over to the other side? Right? To get rid of minus 5, I need to add 5 over to the other side? Because it was a minus 5. Everybody okay?
Yeah.
That was kind of awesome, though, that everybody made the same mistake so we could figure out what was going on. I like when we can do that. All right, I'm trying. It's thinking. There we go. This is number 8. Why is this not making me happy? 2 things are not making me happy. First of all, where's the constant term? Needs to be on the other side, so I end up with an x squared plus 13x equals 4. I can go ahead and put a plus blank on both sides. I added 4 to move it over there. Okay, the part that's not making me happy is what? It's not an even number. So what do I have to do to that? I'd rather you left it as a fraction. You're supposed to divide this by 2, so it's 13 over 2. I know you want to cry a little right now, but how do we get back to this box or this blank? Square it. So you square the top and the bottom, right? 13 over 2 times 13 over 2 should be 169 over 4. Whatever we did to that side, we got to do this side. So how are we going to simplify that side? I don't have my thing on the screen, but type 4 plus 169 divided by 4. Math, enter, enter. 16, 185 over 4. Now what? Yep, we're going to square root both sides. So we get x plus 13 halves because the squared out here and the square root are going to undo each other. Over here we have to remember a plus or minus. And we have a square root of 185 on the top and a square root of 4 on the bottom. The good news is what? Square root of 4 becomes just 2. So guess what we don't have to deal with? Those silly square root in the denominator business. Okay? Don't have to deal with that today. So to get x all by itself, though, what are we doing with this 13 halves? We just had this problem. Yeah, we're subtracting it over there. So it's going to be a minus 13 halves, minus 13 halves. I'm just going to write negative 13 halves plus or minus the square root of 185 over 2. you could actually write that. Oh, we were doing so good here, little cursor. You could actually write it as negative 13 plus or minus the square root of 185, and it's all divided by 2. But I'm good with leaving it as 2 separate fractions. All right. So I hope you're taking good notes, because you're going to want to go back tomorrow when you have some class time to work and look at these. Okay, we're supposed to solve by factoring. We didn't spend a lot of time yet on the Peach factoring review worksheet. If there's some of that you have questions on, we'll go over those tomorrow as well. But what do we need to do to number 9? How does that factor? Are you serious right now? Serious as a heart attack? Why is this not working again? How does this factor, guys? Okay. X and X. To get factors of 9 that make 8, we need a 9 and a 1. We need a negative 9, so put the negative here, positive here. I check that the middle is coming out negative 8. By doing the inside and outside, I get a negative 9x plus 1x is a negative 8x. We're all good. Then we do my favorite game. There is a very important property of math that says if this is true, and only if they equal 0, that when two things multiply to make 0, the only way to get that is if one of them is equal to 0. So we say either this is equal to 0 or this is equal to 0. So we get x equals 9 or negative 1. Most of you don't even think about that. You just write it down without thinking about it, right? But be very careful. That is why it works. It has to be equal to 0. We get to trig in the second half of the year, and people start doing this. That's a 4. And they'll go, oh, I'll take out an x. So either x equals 4 or x plus 2 equals 4. Is there such a rule as two things that multiply to make 4? One of them has to be 4? No. Okay. The only way this rule works is if we have a 0. All right. So what can we do first to number 10? Yeah, take out a 2 would be our best friend right now. That leaves x squared plus 5x minus 14 equals 0. Are there some factors of 14 that will make 5? I need an x and an x. Factors of 14 that make 5 would be 7 and 2. Okay. Now, I need a positive 5, so I'm thinking a plus and a minus. Again, checking here, I'd have 7 minus 2 is 5x in the middle. Okay, what happens with this 2 out front? There are 3 things here that multiply to make 0. Okay, so this could be true, this could be true, or this could be true. On a good day, does 2 equal 0? Not so much. So this is not a solution. It just disappears. We could have divided everything through by 2 and thrown it away in the beginning. So we get x equals negative 7 or x equals 2. Do you think I can smush that last one in? I kind of think I can, because how does that last one factor? X, yeah, x plus 7 and x minus 7. So we get x equals negative 7 or positive 7. We could have moved the 49 over to the other side and then square rooted both sides. The problem is sometimes students forget the plus or minus then, but the other thing is the direction said we had to do factoring, so we should show the factoring. Any questions? All right, moving quickly on to more factoring. Can I skip this one, or is it different? I don't think that's hard, is it? Minus 4 and minus 2. I'll write it down so you have it in your notes, but we good? I added the 8 over to the other side first. All right, what do you want to do first on the 13 then? subtract the 3 over. Now this is where we get into some factoring that some of you struggle with. When the coefficient out front is not 1, we have to deal with that, and then we have to be very careful about the middle term. The only way to make a 2x squared with nice integers is a 2x and a 1x. And the only way to make a 3 in the end term is a 3 and a 1. The question becomes, is it 1 and 3 or 3 and 1, right? The way I wrote it, I just did whatever came to me. Now, if I do the outside and inside terms here, I get a 3x and a 2x. Can I make that give me a negative 1x? If I'd had a negative 3x plus a 2x, I'd get a negative 1x in the middle. And negative 3 times 1 still gives me the negative 3 at the back. All right, somebody's going to write this. That's a fail. Why is that a fail? Because this one is 2x minus 3 equals 0, which means if we add the 3 over, we still have to divide by 2. This one is x plus 1 equals 0, so we get negative 1. That's supposed to say x equals negative 1. It's kind of messy. All right. It's got to equal 0. It does. Ideas? Can I take out a 3 first? Now, can 3 equal 0? No, so I could throw that 3 out. I'm going to leave it there for a minute. Okay, this is not working, and it's... Okay, to get a 3x squared... You know why it's not working? Because I emailed him that it was all good. He could undo my tech request now because it was working the last couple of days. That's why it's not working anymore. Okay, what are factors of 10 you want to try? Okay, if I try it in that order... In the middle here, I have 5 times x, and on the outside, no idea how to make that work, 3x and 2. Does that make 1? The 3 times 2 is 6, 5 times 1. So which one do I want to be negative? Yeah, I need the 6 to be negative, so I need it back here, which... No idea how to get it to go there. Really want to scream right now. Okay. I think that's right. Can 3 equal 0? Nope. So that guy's gone. I'm just writing random places now. Okay, 3x plus 5 equals 0 would solve and become what? Negative 5/3, yes. And the other one, x minus 2 equals 0, would just give me positive 2. All right, what time are we done? 23? Does that sound right? Okay, so we don't have a lot of time to get through quadratic formula. Quadratic formula needs to be memorized, just like today's quiz that you got back, where it asked you to state the formula. That's going to be on there. So we state the quadratic formula, okay? When you read it to yourself, I would say I would say the opposite of b. You can say negative b, but just remind yourself it means opposite of. Plus or minus b squared. Okay, but when you type it in your calculator, because if b is negative, it's going to mess you up, so I always practice parentheses there. Minus 4 times a times c. And then it's all divided by 2a, and remember, that has to be simplified first, the 2a. Okay, before I go any further, I want to show you this slide. You gonna kill kittens? Yeah, don't kill the kittens or the puppies. Why can you not do that? Yeah, any pluses or minuses make everything go together and we can't undo it, right? So this becomes the question that students, you will get something like this. It's a 7. And somebody will go, oh yeah, let's cancel that with this. No. Okay. Can I do this 6 into the 2 into the 6? Well, I can if I do both, right? It's all divided by 2. Nobody's going to do any crazy simplifying. All right. Back to the original question. I'm kind of going to write this out as I go. If I lift my pen, it's going to be chaos. Opposite of B, well, let's write it down for our notes. A is 1, B is -4, and C is 1 on this one. Just to be clear where we're getting those. Then we write out the opposite of B, which would be +4, plus or minus, okay, parenthesis B, which is -4 squared minus 4. This 4 comes from the formula times A, which is 1, times C, which is 1. And all of that is over 2 times A. Right. I'm sorry, there's a big gap in there. It's just my pen. So I have 4 plus or minus. Can you type that in? My emulator is still not working. Let's see if I can use this old one and it works. Was it -4 squared? If you don't want to use a bunch of parentheses, it's all good. You just have to put it in as a positive. Otherwise, you need the parentheses. It was -4 squared minus 4AC, right? Which was 4 times 1 times 1. No? Times 1 times. Now even this doesn't work. Everybody getting 12? Whether you did in your head or on your paper? Okay, so it's plus or minus the square root of 12 all over 2. Okay, who remembers how to simplify radicals? We have not spent a lot of time on that. The square root of 12 is the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. One of them has to be a perfect square. The square root of 4 is 2. So we still have a 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 3, and it's all over a 2. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write each one over 2 so that you remember you got to divide it into both or you can't reduce it at all. It's 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. And that's what x equals. There are 2 solutions. All right, I'm going to try to get through this one. Can I go straight? Do I have to write down what A, B, and C are? You got it? Opposite of B, anybody? 6 plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4 times 2 times -5. Be very careful. All over 2 times 2. So I have 6 plus or minus. This is where students mess up. This should be 76, I think. Did anybody get square root of 76?
Yes.
all over 4. 76 is divisible by 4. So we end up with 6 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 19, I think. Somebody checking me? 76 divided by 4 is 19. Okay, then what? Square root of 4 is 2, so that's just a 2 square root of 19. So now I have 6 over 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 19 over 4. Ugh. There's several different ways you could reduce this. Yeah, you could take a 2 out of each of them and leave it 3. 3 plus or minus the square root of 19 over 2. That has to go all the way across. Or if you separated it, or anybody, or would you like me to write or? Because it's making a mess. Or 3 halves plus or minus the square root of 19 over 2. Okay. I didn't get to one that has an imaginary answer, which is number 17. Work on starting this tonight. Tomorrow I will talk about the discriminant. I will talk about imaginary numbers a little bit. And then we'll take the pretest and you have the rest of the hour to work. Does that seem like a plan? So tonight, feel free to get started on worksheet 2, the evens.
What happened with the packet? Why is it all one-sided?
It is? Is that? Oh, that's why it feels like a... I don't know what happened, why it all got run one-sided.